Okay, so back on the Cessna, the front landing gear is hopefully going to get finished tonight. One thing I was noticing is that this piece of plywood over here is half the thickness of this one, because it's originally, I think, probably 1/16 or maybe even 1/4 inch, but obviously it got delaminated, so I've made a piece that fits in here that furs this out back to this original location, and that's where the firewall will attach to. Okay, I'm going with the fast epoxy. I've dry fit this multiple times. I'm going to use the old firewall as my mixing board, and I'm just going to put out enough to attach the spacer, and that's it, because this stuff dries pretty fast and you only want to put out as much as you're going to use, and that's about it for this little part. Okay, so lots of epoxy on that. I want it to be pretty thick, and it's basically gonna slide in just right like that. There we go. Back out to the original thickness. I've left a little bit up top here because I'm actually gonna run a brace solid piece all the way back here, and I'm gonna pack that separately. That's actually gonna be a little bit thicker piece of wood there. So, all right, I'm gonna hold that for a minute, and then I'm gonna put a clamp on it. Okay, so that's all clamped up. I'm gonna let that sit for about 10 minutes. They say it's a 5-minute epoxy, but I want to make sure everything's nice and solid. Okay, so there's my new firewall. Because I'm gonna need a lot of epoxy, I'm just gonna mix it right on the board. I'm just gonna put a piece here and some over here. These lines indicate no glue in this area right now, because that's where my plate is going to attach that angles the front wheel forward. So I'm only going to glue both sides, and we're going to clamp her in place. Okay, so I got lots of epoxy on either side of my lines. I'm also going to be putting screws through here. Probably put a couple on either side here, just to make sure this does not happen again, because let's be honest, these things aren't built like they used to be, to put it quite simply. Okay, so we're going to mount that, and then we're going to put a clamp on it. There's nothing better than having the right tool for the job. I'm literally cutting the last layer of plywood off of this spacer here in order to salvage this profile, because I really don't want to have to try to cut that again. Okay, so got the spacer ready to go. Actually didn't turn out too bad. I want it a bit rough on the back so the glue actually sticks. You don't want it too smooth, that's for sure. And it's getting bolted through, so that's not going anywhere. Okay, so I've packed out a bit more on the firewall, because this is where the gear mounts to, and it wasn't quite straight, so I just added another layer and a spacer beside one corner, just to get it nice and flat. So we're gonna let that sit for a bit. Okay, there we go. A whack ton of epoxy. So we're gonna remove this clamp, we're gonna put this in place, and we're gonna reclamp it. Okay, we're gonna let that set up for the night, and there's real no hurry. It's absolutely pouring rain for the next few days, so I'm gonna take my time and make sure this is really strong. So anyways, we got a few layers of plywood there, plus the original shim that angles the front wheel forward, and tomorrow we're gonna finish her up. Okay, so the next piece to go in, and this is just for reinforcement purposes only, is something solid behind the landing gear that will connect it to the rest of the airplane. So I guess in the construction world, this is called a buttress. And a lot of the times these go in on the concrete foundations when you got really tall walls and you want something to brace them going back the other direction. So that is just a scrap piece of plywood that I had laying around that's now going to take any direct force from this firewall, transfer it back to this one here, which is actually, I would say, 16th thick plywood. And there's also some more heavy material down in the bottom here. So that's going to really stiffen things up a bit. Okay, so there we go. That firewall is now braced with a buttress back to the firewall behind it. So that has now made this landing gear system a lot stronger. We just have to bolt the front wheel back on, connect up the steering servo, and cover everything. And then hopefully we'll be back in the air.